Thanks for staying with us on The Real Story. Finally, we are on the backside of the Omicron COVID surge. COVID numbers are trending down. That being said, there are still people getting sick, and the threat of COVID is still very real. But lawmakers are starting to look at the mandates put in place, particularly ones laid out quickly when COVID cases were rapidly rising more than a month ago. Hartford just rolled back its mask mandate, although Hartford Mayor Luke Bronin is still encouraging people to wear masks and, of course, get vaccinated and boosted. It's been a tough 2 years, though, not easy ones to navigate for Hartford Mayor Luke Bronin. And this morning, Mayor Bronin is once again our guest. Hello there. It's been a while. Good to have you back on.
Hey, Jen, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, so we're going to talk about the mask mandate in a moment. But first of all, you recently underwent abdominal surgery, and you were out for a little while. So I just want to know how you're feeling.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for asking. I'm feeling pretty good. You know, it's sort of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I had a pair of surgeries, one in December and then one just last week. I'd been battling ulcerative colitis for a number of years, and ultimately they came to the conclusion that the best way to deal with it was to remove my colon. So, you know, life without a large intestine takes some getting used to, but hopefully on the other side of this, I'll feel a whole lot better.
I didn't realize that you had surgery just last week. So shorter recovery period, obviously, than the first one, which is good.
That's right.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're feeling well. Let's talk about this mask mandate ending in Hartford. You had talked about the drop in COVID numbers, but you'd also said, look, we said that we were going to drop these mandates when it was necessary. And, you know, you did. Some people would say, oh, it's a little early. Why did you decide to drop the mask mandate?
Well, look, when we put the mask mandate back in place at the beginning of January, I told our community that we were going to put it in place for a month, that we would obviously reassess, and if the numbers justified keeping it in place, we'd keep it in place. But I said that if the numbers were moving significantly in the right direction, then when January came to an end, the indoor mask requirement would end as well. And I think it's important to stick to those commitments. You know, we don't know what the course of this pandemic will be in the months and years ahead. We may well deal with additional surges, new variants. And I think when we ask our community to respect mandates, to abide by requirements for the sake of the common good, it's also important that we show that that's not a one-way ratchet, that we put those requirements in place when necessary to protect public health, but that when things are moving in the right direction, we adjust the other way too.
I feel like Hartford is one of the cities here in Connecticut that really felt COVID's impact. I mean, we all felt COVID's impact, but you had people working downtown. Now, now people are working from home. So the commuting in and out isn't as frequent as it was before. Our restaurants, people were coming into Hartford for the restaurants. Obviously, people are now going back into restaurants in Hartford. We have amazing restaurants in the capital city. But how has it been now 2 years out? Where do we stand in Hartford?
You know, first of all, the human toll and the toll on our community has been profound. I mean, we've in this small city, we've lost almost 400 lives to COVID over the course of the last 2 years. And as you know, statewide, 10,000 people have died from this virus. So the impact has been shattering and heartbreaking. And of course, you can measure the consequences of this coronavirus pandemic in so many different ways. I mean, the psychological impact on all of us, on the psychological impact on kids. And then, as you say, also just on the vibrancy and vitality of a city. You know, you think back to the beginning of 2020, and we had a tremendous amount of energy and momentum in this city. For the first time in a while, you felt like we were really, firing on all cylinders. And there's no question that it's been hollow and empty for a great deal of this pandemic. And the work of recovering from that is going to take a deliberate, concerted effort to use the resources we've got in strategic ways, and it's going to take some time. But I am hopeful that with some of the investments that we're able to make because of the Biden administration's American Rescue Plan, and because just of the perseverance and tenacity of a whole lot of people who love this city, I am confident that we're going to come out strong. But it's been a long haul, and we got a little ways to go. The other thing I would say is, you mentioned restaurants. there's no question restaurants have been hit terribly hard, and I hope that Congress will refill that restaurant relief fund, because that really was a critical lifeline for restaurants, and they've now had to shoulder this for a whole lot longer than anyone thought they would. And I think it's important that that relief continue.
I think a couple of months ago you were calling for the restaurant fund to be refilled, if I recall. I was reading something that was out from your office. So it's been several months, right, since...
That's right. And a lot of restaurants hung in there through the darkest, hardest days of the pandemic and thought they were coming to the end of the tunnel and seeing the light, and then have been hit by a series of waves of these variants that have sort of pulled the rug back out from under them. So, and of course, that experience is in no way unique to Hartford. Communities across the country are seeing that same thing. But cities like Hartford, where you usually have a very large working population, working community coming into the city every day that isn't there on a daily basis, have felt that, I think, even more significantly.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that the first thing you brought up was the human toll, because we do have to remember that hundreds of people in the city did lose their lives to COVID, and thousands across the state. Let's talk about the human toll with this issue of fentanyl, which continues to be a big problem. A 13-year-old at a school in Hartford died from overdosing. More than 40 bags of fentanyl found inside the school, more than 100 bags found in this child's house. I mean, this is a problem. And there were calls to put Narcan in schools. And now I think it sounds like, from what I was reading, that's going to happen.
Look, that was a devastating and tragic loss for our community and for this boy's school community and his family. Look, there is no community in the state, city, suburb, small town, there's no community in the country that hasn't been hit by the opioid epidemic and hasn't been hit hard. To lose a 13-year-old to fentanyl poisoning, I think, was nonetheless a shock to all of us. And it's right that we ask questions like, should there be Narcan in schools? But I think more importantly, we need to ask the bigger question of how do we effectively combat this opioid epidemic on every front, through awareness, education, but also expanded access to treatment. I really think that this has to be a central part of the conversation, is expanding access to treatment, especially medication-assisted treatment, medication-assisted therapy, which has been proven to be effective. It's still far too difficult to get access to that treatment. And as a country and as a society, we've got to put a lot of work into that, because until we make it easier for those who are battling addiction to deal with that addiction, we're going to continue to see this poison out there in an almost ubiquitous way in communities of all kinds.
I do remember that before the pandemic hit, we were talking about the opioid crisis and the drug crisis all across Connecticut. And, it is sad to see 2 years later, we still are. And it has, if not been exacerbated by the problems with COVID, no doubt. All right, Hartford Mayor Luke Bronin, thank you so much for coming on The Real Story and catching up with us. And we hope that you continue to feel better.
Thanks so much, Jen. Thanks for having me, and look forward to doing this in person sometime soon.
I hope so as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Take care.
All right, that does it for us on The Real Story. If you want to watch these segments again, head to fox61.com or download the Fox 61 News app and watch The Real Story every Sunday at 10 a.m. right here on Fox 61. Have a great morning.